Hello everyone and welcome along to another episode of Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. On my left is Steve Ryder, as he always is, but we welcome back an old friend to the show, Sam Turner. You've been around the world, and aye.
Yes, truly.
How are you?
Yeah, lovely to get the band back together. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Tremendous,
like a veterans tour, this, with my hombre, Steve. Thought I was walking into a spaghetti western when I turned up today.
By the way, have we given details of how people can sponsor you?
No, but I'll put it in the description.
It's not just a
not just a
personal thing.
Yeah, it's a change in fashion.
Yeah, it's working well for you. You're popular down the Blue Oyster Club, I should imagine.
How did you enjoy your time in Dubai?
Very much, thank you. Yeah, it was great. Quite challenging in parts, but and perhaps a little bit too brief. Not for people here, obviously, as Dubai's gain is the UK's loss. But no, I enjoyed it. I learnt an awful lot. Yeah. Patience being the primary thing, and then sort of. It was nice to have a bit of time away from British racing because it's sort of reinvigorated me and you know, I'm starting to...
Did you miss it?
Really enjoy. I did, yeah. I watched a fair bit of the jumps racing because it fitted in well with my working day, get back, and obviously being 4 hours in front, could get back and watch all the leading jumps races, even the Monday to Friday stuff as well. So saw that you had tons of rain, and then obviously I've come back. We can't get any rain. We've got no runners, and happy days. Yeah. But it's lovely to be back, and yeah, I've had a really enjoyable day at Wincanton Saturday, and Newbury Thursday. So I'm trying to get around 1 or 2 tracks.
Excellent, Steve. How would you sum up last weekend's action in a concise way before going into detail?
I thought some of the action was good. We obviously had some talking points. We obviously had the debacle at Chelmsford with regards to the stalls. I do think we do need to look into that because we do need to do something with regards to that. We're very lucky that nobody lost their life in that. Whether we have like an audible warning over the sound system where a race needs to be stopped, or whether you could, I don't know, flash the floodlights or to have some sort of warning, because the people with the flags that were running down the track were so brave to be able to do that to incoming horses on that bend. I do think we need to do that. We also had the Jericho de Refrenay debacle at Sandown, delay in the start.
Extraordinary.
It was interesting because I flicked the race on in order to watch it onto the racing TV coverage, and it was, where is he? And actually, when he was then coming down to the start, he was absolutely fine. Yeah. And if I wanted to get involved in him at that point, I would have done. I mean, a lot's been made of the betting, I think. No horse should ever open 1 to 5 in a novice handicap chase on his first start over fences. He was the wrong price. I think he drifted to 1 to 2, which I thought was more the price that he should have been. And then if you are acting up in the preliminaries, you're perfectly entitled to drift to 8 to 13, 4 to 6. But throughout the race, after the mistake at the second, I actually thought he'd got himself back into it before he made, obviously, the blunder that curtailed the end of his race. Yeah. And yeah, I don't think there's a lot in this. No. It just seems to happen to Nicky Henderson.
Well, I was going to say, he's going to get one of those Mario Balotelli shirts. Yeah. And when he wins a big race at Cheltenham, he's going to turn it over his head and say, why always me? Because it always is. For whatever reason, it's what you say, it follows him around, doesn't it?
Well, the one thing I love about being in Dubai for a year is that you come back and everything's still the same. We're still finding great ways to shoot ourselves in the foot. I mean, Steve makes a very serious point and a valid one about the Chelmsford debacle, and hopefully that's the wake-up call that we need proper provisions in place for an instance like that. You know, and I think we've been very lucky that we've got away and had a warning across the bows. Hopefully they implement something very quickly and don't wait for it to happen again. I must admit, I've always thought, you know, what if you see that, and the tractor always pulls the stalls off the track, you know, 365 days a year pretty much, but one instance and it could be an absolute nightmare.
That was a crisis situation. A lot of people often say crisis moments give you an opportunity. So let's take the opportunity and fix it for the future. In the meantime, we will focus on this week's racing recap. And we start this week at Aintree, where the big race was the Grand Sefton. A lot of familiar names in that race. A lot of horses who knew their way around the track. But it was a new player on the scene. King Turgeon turned in a lovely performance for the David Pipe team.
Yeah, good comment you make there about a lot of familiar horses going around the track, because obviously they all finished pretty much bar one. No fallers, no casualties, which will have appeased plenty of people in the game. Perhaps not the old school, but we've covered that ad nauseum really. And yeah, great to see him win. 22-year-old Jack Tudor as well. Gave him a great spin in front. Looks a great horse going forward. Turgeons, they seem to get older with age. All horses get older with age. Better with age. And yeah, I just think the ceiling for him is pretty high, to be honest. Yeah. I love the way that he jumped, travelled through the race and attacked the fences as well. Seemed to love the game, didn't he?
Yeah, obviously, Steve, you highlighted in one of the stats you sent me was the fact that there have been 89 races over the national fences since 2003. And it's the first time that there have been no fallers or on seats in a race over the national course. I mean, that's been a big talking point. The excitement and the unique nature of the Grand National fences has changed enormously.
It has, and we saw that in the Grand National last year. We had, 15 in contention, approaching the second last and the last. So it does make, when you look at a race with regards to betting and tipping in a different light. I remember growing up, you had the kind of the cheat sheets, and it says, have they got form over the Grand National fences, tick or cross? Where that's kind of now irrelevant. I had my eye on Richmond Lake, having tipped him at 25s. And even though he had the previous experience in the Beecher last season, he didn't jump well. He made 3 or 4 mistakes, but never looked like falling. Yeah. And that's the thing with these fences. I think they're actually easier to jump and less casualties than your conventional fences because they just brush through the top of them. It was only Harper's Lake who obviously was pulled up approach in the last that didn't complete, but that was a pull-up rather than a fall and an unseat. I don't think the form of the race is anything to kind of take forward for me, other than the winner, who was obviously a couple of pounds well in at the weights. But the real thing to take out of that, and over the previous couple of weeks, is the resurgence of David Pipe. Like, whatever they have changed or whatever they're doing, they need to keep doing it. For sure. Jack Tudor obviously is relatively new in that role, and yeah, they're both reaping the benefits.
Yeah, great to see David having a resurgent time of it. I always think it's really difficult, speaking to him and sort of Charlie Hills and people of that ilk that have obviously had a father that has done so exceptionally well in the game, then trying to follow in those footsteps. And quite often the father is still there, quite vocal in the background, and you're never really sure whether they're actually allowed to do the job the way they feel that they should be doing the job. And of course, the game has improved and progressed in the last 10, 15, 20 years since these guys retired. So yeah, I'm very pleased for David that he's sort of having a good time.
Lots of smart young horses, which is what we need.
But even like 10 years ago, he had Dynast and Grand Cru were top Grade 1 level performance, and Tom Portu won a couple of times at the Cheltenham Festival. And he'd just been in the doldrums for 5, 6, 7 years, and yeah, it's nice to see him with a young bunch of horses going forward.
Speaking of resurgence, this time last week, everyone wondering what Paul Nicholls was doing down in Ditchett. Well, Saturday was a pretty good day. Having said that, he did not win the big race, the Badger Beers. Let's focus on that first of all. Al Dancer, Callum Pritchard, a bold front-running ride. What did you make of it?
I loved the ride. Absolutely loved it. And I'm really glad that he continued to ride the second last, the last. You see a lot of jockeys give bold front-running performances and then coming up to the last two kind of go, oh, please don't fall, and kind of steady them into it. Whereas he was, no, we're going for this. Yeah. I love the ITV racing coverage, but when they go to this ex-jockey partway through a race, I do think it's setting them up for a fall. The number of times that they go to Mick Fitzgerald or AP McCoy and they say, yeah, this one's really jumping well, and then the next fence they then blunder. And it was kind of similar. I felt a bit bad for Mick Fitz during it because they went to him and he said, there's no way that he can keep this up throughout the race. They're going far too fast, and off he goes. Stays 10 lengths clear. Obviously, I put up Lord Accord last week as one of my best bets, and it just never looked like he was ever going to get there. I thought it was a fantastic performance. I hadn't really looked into detail on the show last week into Al Dancer because he wasn't jocked up. Obviously, Dylan Johnston at the minute is out injured-wise. But if you looked at him, you could make the case for him. Fantastic form, fresh. Yep. I wonder whether something like the Topham at the end of the season would suit him well. Obviously, he has previous form over the Grand National fences, and with
not that matters
anymore.
Yeah.
With that bold front running style, I thought something like that would be. The handicap was impressed, up £5 to 259. Like, he's going to be close to one of the highest rated
11 years of age as well.
Crazy, yeah. Well done to Sam Thomas as well. I mean, he's got his horses in really good nick. Did you think the Changing Man was still in with a shot at the title when he came down?
Yeah, conceivably, but just the way that Al Dancer, I mean, like Steve, I backed Lord Accord, I backed Forward Plan, those two, second and fourth. Lord Accord win only, Forward Plan each way, so it worked out brilliantly for me. And I just always thought, I think Remastered falling probably helped Al Dancer, because then he could
Took
just
the
get a
pressure
couple
off
of
a bit,
breaths and then he could just, ping away himself. But they just never really looked like reeling him in. I half thought if it collapsed, Lord Accord had got a chance, but I was never really confident all the way around. He just got into such a great rhythm.
Yeah, I thought the first two were going. I thought Remastered and Al Dancer were going to be hard to pass on that. But thankfully, Remastered was up and okay.
Yes.
The Elite Hurdle. Paul Nicholls won it with Rubaud for the second successive year. Brentford Hope ran a cracking race, but he made a couple of mistakes up the straight. I thought that was the difference between the
maybe.
two.
I don't think Paul O'Brien ever felt that he was really going to find the required just to get past Rubaud, who was winning the race for the second successive year. Loved the ground. We just needed 10 or 12 mils of rain in the week. Obviously, it wasn't forecast. I think on soft, we'd have gone very close on Brentford Hope. But he ran great. The time of the race was right up there with his career best at Newcastle last week. So fair play to Rubaud. As we've touched on, 5 winners for Paul Nicholls. He was supposed to be bang out of form. And what was encouraging for him was that he was having 1 or 2 horses that were winning first time off the shelf. Larchmont Lass.
Teague.
But he went through the line strong, didn't he? And rather than just needing that run like Bobalco or 1 or 2 or Sorcerer, just put him right at Exeter. He was actually winning with horses that were having first time out runs, and that for me is the key with the Nicholls horses.
That's important when we talk about races to come later on. Rubaud, the plan is to go over fences now. He's 50-1 for the Arkle. Is he even in your consideration?
Not for Cheltenham. I like him as a horse.
He'll win races, won't he?
Yeah. I backed him. I tipped him for this race, and as well as Brentford Hope was travelling, I always thought Harry Cobden was in control. Previously in his career, I thought Rubaud was quite keen going, wore a hood, but I thought Harry Cobden was just in complete control of that race. I think Brentford Hope, you've got to be aiming at stuff like Christmas Hurdle, fighting 5th, because we haven't exactly got a load of 2-milers. If Rubaud then goes over fences, I do think there is an opportunity to chase home Constitution Hill if he is obviously in that same sort of form.
He's had an entry for the fighting 5th this morning.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe go Christmas Hurdle, but as Harry Derham quite rightly points out, is his best horse and he wants to win a race with him. So it's great finishing second and getting nice prize money. We got 15,000 on Saturday. The prize money was ridiculous, really.
What was it?
148 was he?
148. I'm just thinking what obviously the Betfair Hurdle would be.
Yeah, I think Harry wants to work back from the Kingwell.
Okay.
That would be his champion hurdle, really.
Right.
And he hasn't been over 2.5 yet. And I wouldn't be against trying him over 2.5 and just seeing what there is, because the way he travelled away on Saturday, like you, I didn't think his hurdling was as slick as it can be. Just got into the last, which probably cost him as the pace was quickening. That just might be a bit of ring rustiness.
The Rising Star Novices Chase has thrown up 1 or 2 useful horses in the past. Handstands came down, and he was the sort of big talking horse going into the race. What did you make of the result of Boomborn beating Soul Icon?
I thought it was a bit of a disappointing contest. Looking back in hindsight, to be honest, I felt sorry for the front running Soul Icon. I thought he jumped really well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I was a bit sad to see him ran down late. It was inevitable. You were watching for about 30 seconds, going, "Yeah, you're going to get caught here." Boomborn, unlike a few of his stablemates, actually ran on fast ground. Obviously, that's been a bit of a talking point recently around Dan Skelton pulling them out.
I saw Dan on Saturday. I said, "Have you walked the track before racing?" And he said, "No need. These are 2 summer jumping horses." I'm delighted.
And that's it. And I haven't got a problem with Dan Skelton pulling horses out. When you bring in the word welfare, that does then become a slightly grey area. I just think you need to exactly as is said there, you have good ground horses and you have soft ground horses. But what is he doing declaring horses when you know what the ground is, you know that there's no rain forecast, and you know that the track has no facility to be able to water? I think that's where it's then a bit of a grey area.
Yeah, the only thing I would say with that is we weren't going to run Brentford Hope last week, and then Harry said, "Look, let's declare and go and have a look at the ground." And because Sandown did such a good job on Sunday, and he went on Thursday night and walked Sandown, and that was safe. He said, as long as it's safe, there's a difference between running on ground that we know he's not a big fan of, or he doesn't operate so well on, or running on ground that's unsafe. So we walked the track an hour before the race. The ground was perfectly safe, plenty of moisture in it, and we were happy to run, you know, knowing full well that, you know, all fingers crossed that he wouldn't, you know, damage himself on that ground. It was perfectly safe. They'd done a good job maintaining good ground.
The only thing I'd jump in here on Steve's part is the use of the word safe.
Yeah.
Regardless of whichever, it's such a subjective.
It's quite an emotive word as well,
Yeah,
isn't it?
and it's a subjective thing as well, quite
Yeah.
often, because you're talking about the context of your horse.
Yeah.
And it may not be
Safe for Brentford Hope.
suitable. I think
Yeah.
suitable is a
Yeah.
much better word, because
Yeah.
there's to use the word as long as it's safe ground. It means that it's for people watching. There's some element of it being unsafe.
Yeah.
So it's either going to suit the horse or it isn't
Yeah.
going to suit the horse. If it isn't going to suit the horse, it means the horse probably won't run up to its best. So you can understand why you wouldn't want
Yes.
to go in the race.
It was unsuitable for us, but it was still perfectly good ground.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just the way things have changed, though.
Yeah.
But that's how it's
Genuinely,
worded
that's
as a
the-
non-runner, isn't it? As a non-runner, it's unsuitable ground
Yeah.
for the horse.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, I just don't like the word.
I'm with you. Okay, the Tizard team
Yeah.
in excellent form. I mentioned the change him. I thought he was running well till he came down.
Yeah.
But they had a great day at Exeter on Friday in the Holden Gold Cup. JPR1 was, I thought, superb the way he travelled through the race.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that afternoon which helped to, you know, perhaps rewrite the narrative. Obviously, with Captain Teague having a walkover and, you know, 2 and 3 runner races, it was a pretty damp squib at one point. But, you know, Bryony Frost win and also JPR1, which was quite a emotional win, I think, for the team. I think he holds that horse in great esteem.
Yeah.
Joe having a great autumn as well at the moment, firing in loads of winners, probably having all the winners that Paul Nicholls thought he was going to have all throughout November, and doing exceptionally well. I don't know if that horse will ever truly convince me with his head carriage, because he's a bit starey for me, but, you know, he won quite cosily. I thought the second horse had a lovely introduction to his campaign.
Yeah, what did you think of the effort? A lot of people made a lot about the ride, and that he could have been a bit more.
The thing with Charlie Deutsch
He's
is
quite
that
right, isn't he?
he's a very quiet ride, and you wouldn't know whether he's holding on to tons of horse or no horse, because just the way that he is and the way that he rides, you know, he's almost motionless, isn't he? Just, you know, beautiful horseman. And I wouldn't know whether he's tanking or whether he's empty. I just wouldn't, you know. And look, I'm not a rider, but I've watched a fair few races in my time, and you get to read body language with certain jockeys, and I just can't read him at all. Never play poker with him either.
You wouldn't want to, probably.
No.
What did you make of JPR1? How realistic are his prospects of winning a big race over 2 miles this year?
Quite high, I'd say. I mean, I was a big fan of him last season as a novice chaser. He improved 20 pounds over fences last season. The one thing that concerned me, and I was with Sam, I'm a bit concerned of him in a finish. And then when they declared him with a first-time tongue tie and a wind operation, I went, ooh, I'm not sure about this, which kind of put me off him. I just think he kind of idles at the finish. I thought Jello will now go back up in trip. Obviously, his kind of best performances last season, I think, were over 2.5 miles. I think he changed home Grey Dawn and then Ginny's Destiny at Cheltenham, didn't he, over 2.5. So whether that was in Charlie Deutsch's mind of, I'm a bit outpaced here and we'll see how he then runs on at the finish, and probably, I suppose, caught him out, I think, probably how strongly he then stayed on at the finish. But I'm like Sam, I can't read him at all. I think it was a couple of weeks ago in the Master Chewy race. He won on Matador, and I was on Master Chewy going, I'm not really sure what you've got left here. And I thought I was in a winning position, and as it was, Charlie Deutsch came up on the outside. But the handicap was quite impressed, put him up £5 to 154. And races like the Tingle Creek are going to be right up for him, because as we're going to look at the Schloer Chase later, you're going to have
The old
John Bon, Edward
Stone.
Stone, and not a lot else.
No, absolutely. I really like Sam Bruce run.
Yeah.
I think I was lucky enough to speak to Paul at Newbury on Thursday, and he said whatever this horse does, he'll improve. He's come back 50 kilogram heavier this year. Right. Absolute beast of a thing now. He said he's just turned inside out, so he
We
definitely
all know what
won
that's like.
Well, 50k, I'll take that. Yeah, he's just turned himself inside out for a good summer. So I would thought, you know, going into that meeting, a lot of Paul's horses were still disappointed. It wasn't until we got to Wincanton on Saturday that we saw much more than Nicholls that we know. So I thought he ran perfectly well. I thought he jumped beautifully and definitely one to keep on side.
I thought after the Holden Gold Cup, the takeaway was that Brendan Powell and the Tizards the way that horse moved through the race, I think they'd want to ride him cold from now on. You do not want him
No.
getting to the front before the last.
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to challenge
Getting chilly.
after the last, because he travelled all over them. I know people say about Charlie Deutsch on Jello and he could have done more, etc. I think if they'd sat a little bit colder on JPR1, he'd have beaten Jello easier.
Well, this,
He got to the front a long way from home, and he, as you say, he pricked his head up in the air. He's done more than enough, and he was coasting home, wasn't he?
well, they're learning about him as well. He did that in the Arkle Trial last year, didn't he? He fell at the second last when
when he was
suddenly
front
bursting clear by
Yeah.
4 lengths. And I think suddenly, Brendan Bowell's gone, I've got one effort here, and he still went too soon.
It'd be fascinating to see how he gets on this year. When you look at his profile, he's won first time out, he's won after a 370-day break, a 190-day break, a 241-day break.
Yeah.
He's clearly very good fresh.
Well, hopefully he'll be fresh come the Tingle Creek, because it'd be quite exciting to have a
Yeah.
newer player on the scene. Okay, there was lots to talk about from the weekend. If I'd said to either of you on Saturday morning that handstands, Jericho de Repenay and Caliph de Burley will all start very short for their respective novice races, none will complete. I think a few people would have said that's unlikely. That
The
one
joys
them
of
would
novice chasing, eh?
Yeah. But it was an extraordinary weekend for a number of respects. Who would like to go first with, I mentioned those three, handstands on the weekend.
It was well fancied
yeah.
for the Rising Stars. It was a good
Given
word.
a big build-up by Ben.
Yeah, good word doing the rounds at, pre-race. I think he was probably beaten when he came down. I don't think he'd have won. Like Steve, I was gutted for Soul Icon. I think even Dan Skelton was upset that Soul Icon didn't hold on, if you listen to his comments afterwards. For me, the one performance I really liked was a Novice Hurdle at Aintree, was Mr. Meggitt.
What a performance that was.
The speed figure as well. I mean, it had no right to be associated with a performance of that ease and magnitude, really. I think he's always going places.
So answer me this, right? So after that race happened at Aintree, I was watching it. Obviously, I was in the studio, racing TV, and I went, I think this might be a novice that, from a British perspective, we can be excited about holding his own against the Irish novices. But then immediately my mind then goes, well, I've said that about 100 times in the last 4 or 5 years, but eventually we just get mullered by all the best horses from Ireland. Is there more hope for this horse? There was something different about the way he won.
Not if he goes to the Challow.
But that, everyone wants to go for the Challow now.
I know. But
know,
he's got a
Quebecois,
horrible record bouncing out of that into Cheltenham.
Is it the
hasn't
New Lion?
he? Yeah.
Quebecois.
I thought Bill Joyce as
Quebecois.
well for the
Bill
same,
Joyce,
for the
yeah.
same
Bill
stable
Joyce,
could have
yeah.
gone there as well. But yeah, I was actually watching racing TV and heard your comment, and I think it was actually, if there was a more impressive performance today than Mr. Meggitt, and this was what, 20 past 12?
Yeah,
Or 12:05?
You went early
I
there,
went
didn't
early.
you? You went early there.
But he was
But
so
but
good.
I think you're spot on. Like Paul and I discussed him last week, and
Yeah.
he's living up to his bumper form, isn't he? He won a couple of heavy ground and soft ground bumpers, and then was obviously clipped heels when sent off, I think 15-8 for that Grade 2 bumper at Aintree. And there was a slight question mark I had around him, was the ground again, but he completely quashed that. I was really impressed with how he travelled into the race. I was impressed with how his jumping technique.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was over 2.5 miles. He showed plenty of pace, and whether Bet365 have him 33-1 for the Supreme, he's 25s elsewhere for the Gallaghers. I don't think he's short of speed if they wanted to come back. But it's just really nice for there to be a proper Grade 1 prospect in the colours of Trevor Hemmings.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with him. Another novice hurdler that really took my eye was Anno Power. Obviously, I put her up as my horse to follow for this year on the show last week. Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, she was too keen again in the early stages. She didn't jump particularly well early on, and then suddenly, as she has done in all of her previous performances, she suddenly latches on at 2 out and comes flying through. And I thought she was going to win on the bridle when she kind of cut through everyone, and then fluffed the last and still managed to show a good attitude to get up at the finish. I thought with everything going wrong and her still winning, marks her out as a proper Grade 1 performer down the line. And I actually thought she'd get cut shorter than 14-1 with Bet365 for the Mares Novice Hurdle. I know you're going to look back at that form-wise and say, the second and third aren't much. But just the style of that performance, I was really impressed with.
Big season for Harry Fry as well.
Yeah.
He's down the numbers, I think. Am I right in thinking there's somebody else that's gone in the stable as well? I don't know who he's sharing some of his stable with, so needs a good horse, and looks like he's got one.
Yeah.
When we did the show last week, we talked about a couple of novice races that were over hurdles taking place at Chepstow last week, because I think Paul had put up Let It Rain, who travelled very well. And again, another subject of lots of chat about whether or not Harry Skelton could have done a bit more. But there was a lot of promise in and out, whatever view you take, in both the Durancon race. You know, there's good horses on show, Durancon, Tripoli Flyer, Let It Rain. I mean, Friendship beat Let It Rain. So were there anything else that anybody else wants to mention from the week on?
I'd say, and I understand why punters get a little bit narky about jockeys not taking the stick and looking to get after these horses when they're short prices. But you're talking the first week in November. You don't know the problems that they may or may not have had getting them fit through the summer. Some horses come down readily, some don't. You're talking Chepstow with some dig in the ground, dead ground. Your horses get very tired there very quickly. You've got to be 100% to go and win at those places, I think, on that sort of ground in autumn, especially first thing off the shelf. So I think you just cut them a little bit of slack. You're talking about green, inexperienced horses as well. But yeah, that's the one beauty about the National Hunt game, is that you've always got a chance of seeing a very nice horse midweek at a Chepstow, Wincanter, wherever.
Can I just add to that? I think one thing that people sometimes forget about as well, and having had a small involvement with horses, and I know you see the same, is the fact that quite often, if you have your first experience, whether it's first time out for the season, the last thing you want is a horse finishing the race absolutely blown from a first effort. Ideally, you want a horse to enjoy the experience, especially when they've had a layoff, whether it's 3, 4, 5 months or whether it's their first run. You want them finishing the race off nicely. A lot of trainers ask jockeys to let the horse, you often hear it in their instructions before they go out, finish the race off nicely.
Let him enjoy himself.
So that the horse comes back fresh, because there'll be other days. Obviously, if you can win the race, but it's really important that the horse finishes the race with a little bit, and you don't, the horse isn't absolutely drained at the end of it. And I think that's really important in the context of all the people talking about horses, jockeys trying really hard, especially as you said, this time of the season. Not just Cheltenham, there are lots of other good races to come in December, January, February.
Yeah, absolutely. They're stepping stones, and they're called novice races for a reason, aren't they?
Yeah. Anything else? Barry Connell still believes Marine Nationale is going to be... No? You giving up on Marine Nationale being a big star?
He doesn't jump like a champion chaser, does he?
No, it wouldn't surprise me if they go back over hurdles with him, to be honest.
Okay.
I was impressed with Calixios. He has a fantastic record fresh. If you then look back at it, I think his win... This was his third reappearance win, and the only time that he didn't win on his reappearance when he was second to Tiupu, which isn't bad form in hindsight, is it? The Arkle was a bit of a mess for him last year. I think Rachel Blackmore thought they were going to take another turn. He was left about 10 lengths. Then was hampered by a fooler. He's sort of 33 to 1 with Bet365 for the Champion Chase. And the way that race has been for the last 4 or 5 years, you wouldn't rule him out. He obviously previous Triumph Hurdle winner. I didn't think the performance got enough credit, to be honest, because everyone concentrated on Marine Nationale, as you have done in the build-up to that race.
Indeed.
It's often the way, isn't it?
Yeah.
The short price favourite or the hype horse disappoints, and everybody just tries to find a reason why he's got beaten, not the fact that he's got beaten by a better horse.
Indeed. We'll be talking about the Champion Chase a little bit later in the show, but for what it's worth, right now, the favourite is John Bonnet, 3 to 1 with Bet365, and then the next 3 in the market are all Willie Mullins, Gaelic Warrior, El Fabiolo, and Energumen at 8. Marine Nationale next, 14s in the betting. And as you say, dear old Calixios is 33 to 1. Haddock's Ovos are 66 to 1. JPR 1, 66 to 1. Not the worst bet at this stage. Anyway, that's a look back at what we've seen over the last week or so. Lots of interest. But there's still a lot more to come in today's episode of Racing Weekly. But before we get into our November meeting preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It is available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. 3 terrific days to look forward to at Cheltenham. The likelihood is that the field, certainly for a couple of the big races, are going to hold up. Let's go chronologically and go to Friday. And we have the listed Novice Chase over just over 3 miles. Some good horses lining up for this. Highland, who won at Cheltenham. Springwell Bay, who looked good a lot of people always thought he was going to be a star at some point, but it hadn't quite managed it. There's a horse in there that I really like, Buddy One. There's an old horse coming back. I say old, he's a young horse still, but he's coming back after a long layoff, potentially Hillcrest. How would you like to set us off with this race? What's the horse that you'd like to focus on here?
Well, I'm pretty sure to start with that the Cheltenham Executive will ensure suitable ground for all, unless you're a fast ground horse.
They're going to water, aren't they?
I would imagine that they'll probably put buckets on all the week, and then maybe even one of the evenings of the meeting, I would imagine as well, to ensure suitable ground, we'll say. This is a tricky race for me. I mean, Steve's probably gone through this with a fine-tooth comb for his Robin Goodfellow tips, but obviously Nicky holds the key to it with 3 runners and 3 live chances as well, of which Nico is booked up and jocked up on all 3, so we've got no clues there as to what he may or may not run. Obviously Highland was extremely impressive, highly impressive you would say. Ideal de Board obviously comes back off that win, having had the wind up, and Shanna Bob is the interesting one as well. Has obviously got a very good record fresh for some impressive connections. Wasn't a race that I was in love with punting wise, but like you, Buddy won at this meeting last year over hurdles. He jumped abysmally at Wexford. I'll forgive him one bad effort, but he looks as though he's obviously been trained for this. Maybe he wasn't 100% at Wexford, and if he takes his chance, I'd probably risk him small each way, but not a race that I want to bet in rather.
He's 8-1 with Bet365. Springwell Bay is the 9-4 favourite at the moment. Highland 130, Shanna Bob 4, Search for Glory 11-2, Resplendent Grey 6s, Buddy Ones we say 8s, 10s Hillcrest, 12s Bar. What do you like?
Yeah, so I did look into this in a bit of detail and kind of went to trends to try and help me out. Paul Nicholls has won this race 4 times in the last 9 years. Now, often when you say that, you look back at the SPs of the horses and they're kind of 4-6, 4-7 in small runner races. But actually, if you look at the 4 winners, they were 16-1, 4-1, 11-2 and 11-4. So you are paid handsomely. His only entry in this is Isaac Dezobo, and he could well prove overpriced. He's currently 14-1 at Bet365. Now, looking at ratings, he's rated 133. So he only has £1 to find with Shanna Bob, is nearly 4 times the price. Now, he was really disappointing on his chasing debut, but as we've touched on already in the show, that was at a time where Paul Nicholls were needing the run, and he just ran exactly like that. He travelled and jumped quite well up to 4 out, made a slight mistake at 3 out, and then Harry Cobden let him come in his own time. If he stepped forward from that effort, which you'd expect him to, I thought he'd have a chance in this. The only question mark I've got with him is the ground.
But he might get the softer
exactly.
Of the ground,
so he showed all of his better form as a novice hurdler on soft and heavy ground. So whether they take the chance, Harry Cobden isn't jocked up on him at this point, but I thought he was interesting. Obviously, look at his breeding, he's by Capguard, it's the same sire as Clan Dezobo. The trainer has previously kind of talked around similarities between them, and I thought he was quite a big price. I wouldn't back him anti-post at this stage, I'd wait for declarations, but I thought he was overpriced at 14-1 currently.
It's a really interesting call then. Isaac Dezobo 14-1 at the moment, and I think sort of 2 half votes for Buddy One.
Yeah.
I can't believe he will jump as badly as he. I'm sure that the Gunnigans will work on his jumping. He was much better first time up, and also it's going to be his 3rd start of offences, so hopefully he's got a little bit more. And
you'll put me right, if he's already got a handicap mark, a 133, the Nicholls horse, and you run in a Novice Chase and happen to win and beat 145 rated horses, they can't touch your mark, can they?
I think you can if they win.
Right. Really?
If he finishes 2nd, they can't touch it.
Okay.
But I think if they're a winner, I think they can.
Is that one committee you're not on then, the pattern race committee? Jumps.
Yeah, not jumps. We'll come back to that another day. The Schloer Chase. Last year's 1-2. John Bond, Edward Stone in there. Boot Hill 7-1. John Bond's 2-5. Edward Stone 3-1. Master Chewy 10s. Matata 12s. Calico, Liberty Hunter, Unexpected Party who ran yesterday. All bigger prices. Is it straightforward here for John Bond? Nicky Henderson sounding positive about his return?
Yeah, and I think he's probably the main reason why there's going to be buckets of water put on this week in order to try and ensure that John Bond will run. He's obviously the one to beat. I thought that Dan Skelton might run Calico in this. He won this in 2021 and 22 with Nube Negra. And I'm not a huge fan of Edward Stone anymore. I did used to like him previously, but he's now a veteran. He's now got to 10 years old. And I thought tactically this would be quite interesting because his best performance last year was when he kind of blew the field apart in the game spirit making all. Well, if you've got Matata in this, he's not going to get an easy lead. Dan Skelton, after the reappearance runner Calico, said, I think he's best fresh. We're going to target certain races throughout the season unless a big race cuts up significantly. Well, this looks as if it's going to cut up significantly. I actually disagree with Dan Skelton with regards to it. I think the thing with him that's key to him is the ground. I think he's much better on better ground. So I think they'll probably keep an eye on how much water is put on and what the ground is actually doing at that point. And I wouldn't back him at whatever price he is now, 25.
25s?
I'd look to play him in like a match bet with Edwardstone come the off time, because if Matata's in there, I think they'll kind of take each other on, and Calico could run.
Well, without the favourite market?
Yeah, you could do something like that. But again, this might be a little bit of a theme with me for this. It wouldn't be an anti-post selection, but yeah, if declared. He has got a couple of other entries as well. I think he's got 3 other entries this weekend, especially on Sunday.
In the handicap,
he's in the handicap as well. But the way that Skelton's been targeting this Trainers' Championship, it wouldn't surprise me if he runs around for 3rd.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Edwardstone's best 6 career performances have all come away from Cheltenham. Yeah. He's 10 years of age. He's got a patchy record fresh. He has won off the shelf, but he also has been beaten. I thought the one with the run under his belt was perhaps Master Chewy. I'd probably look to bet him without the favourite. Yep. He's in the process of vying for a frame position in the Arkle last year. He's had that run. Okay, it was in a handicap and he was beaten in a handicap, which is a bit disappointing, but I think he's only got sort of £10 to find with Edwardstone. He's going to be 3 times the price, and at least round Cheltenham he's run well in an Arkle, and he comes here fairly lightly raced over fences, so I think there's a bit more to come from him. He ran in a Grade 1 at Aintree, got beat ahead, or a neck or whatever it was. So I look down the field and I think 1 or 2 of these could go elsewhere, and Unexpected Party won't run. Matata could run in a handicap, so could Calico. Liberty Hunter will be ridden cool. Well,
Liberty Hunter is in the handicap on Sunday, which I thought was interesting.
Yes. So we might have a 4-runner race here.
Quite possibly, yeah. So hopefully it will at least be a competitive race. We don't want another walkover or anything like that. Okay, the Hyde Novices Hurdle also due to take place on Friday. Quite interested in this race because there were a couple of horses that won at the October meeting at Cheltenham. One was quite highly rated going into the race, and they said, yeah, this is a star, potentially, that's Potter's Charm. The other one won impressively, and connections like, hang on, we want to see it again before we get excited about him, and that's Valgrand. They're the top 2 in the market, 15-8 Valgrand, 9-4 Potter's Charm, obviously with Bet365, Manila 6-0, 7-2, 5-1 Flying Fortune has been a real roll for the Bowens, 7-1 Pater Merchant, 8 Gail Marler, who's obviously behind one of the principals last time, and Mr. Percy, and then big prices, the other 4. What about your selection here, Sam? How are you seeing it?
It would definitely be one of the front 2 in the market, rather unoriginally. Valgrand, I was really impressed with his hurdling. Potter's Charm, not so. But I think the step up in trip will suit Potter's Charm perhaps more than Valgrand. I think he's a real strong stayer at the trip. Yeah. And he warmed to his task a little bit, but he just reminded me so much of some of those Twiston Davis hurdlers that don't jump great, but they just keep finding loads. Yeah. He doesn't look a natural, but he's entitled to improve for what he's done already, and I was very, very taken with him, certainly on the run-in as well. Yeah. When we saw him 3 weeks ago, don't think the ground will bother him either. I think Valgrand almost came out of Harry's hands and sort of surprised Dan Skelton a little bit with his performance. I don't know how much that race is worth. The mare that had been winning loads of races, she just never looked herself that day, and I wonder whether Potter's Charm won a slightly stronger race. There's not much between them on the speed figures that we keep, so it would just be purely eye, and my eye would be Potter's Charm. He's a slightly bigger price.
Well, with the eye, using the eye, one horse looked really professional last time, that was Valgrand. The other still looked raw and inexperienced. That's Potter's Charm. So how do you play that? Yeah,
it's an interesting race because you've got Flying Fortune and Gail Marler that have been real success stories over the summer, and they're now meeting the kind of winter horses coming back, and it's whether those fitness levels. And I just thought with Gail Marler obviously getting beaten by Valgrand, I think kind of it's now swung to the winter horses that way. It's interesting that Gordon Elliott has a couple of entries in here, and it was one of his that took my eye. Now, he hasn't had a runner. I only went back 5 years, but he hasn't had a runner in this. And it's actually the bigger price of the two that I quite like, and that was Patter Merchant for Gigginstown. Now, he won a point-to-point in November last year, and then was sent off 1-2 for a bumper only a month later. Now, connections were probably a little bit disappointed the fact that he only won a neck that day, but then looking back at that form, it was actually Sounds Victorious that was the second that day, and he went on to finish fourth in the champion bumper. They pulled 48 lengths clear of the third that day. He then disappointed at Ferry House behind Redemption Day, making his 10th bumper start, which was fair enough. But then I was really impressed with his hurdling debut the other day. Gavin Cromwell had a favourite that day. Patter Merchant then beat him by 4.5 lengths. Again, they pulled a good way clear of the third. He's a typical Gigginstown horse. He's going to be a proper 3-mile chaser going forward. And yeah, I just thought, if he's anywhere near the sort of 7-1 mark come declaration time, I thought he might be a bit of a left field selection against the kind of UK horses, because we all know the Irish novices eventually kind of go that way.
Well, it's amazing that Willie Mullins
with the
hasn't got
exception
an
of
entry.
Mr. Megget, but yes, it is amazing.
I find that very strange. You know, Grady race at Cheltenham, and he doesn't seem to be running that many at the moment, does he?
The Arkle Trial on Saturday has the first two from the Betfair Hurdle, L'Heure de Sud, Iberico Lord and L'Heure de Sud. Jordan's is third choice. L'Heure de Sud is 7-4, Iberico Lord 3-1, 4-1 Jordan's. Path de Roux, who ran just the other day, 5s. Look Away, who I'm really looking forward to seeing him again over fences. He's 8-1. Primosh for the Lucinda Russell team, 10s along with San Salvador, and 12s bar those. Do you fancy anything here?
I do. There's 13 entries for this. I've got a question for you. When was the last time that there was a double-figure field in this race?
I'm going to say at least 10 years ago.
In any novice chase.
2005 was the last time that this had 10 runners or more.
I can't remember.
13 entries. We might get close to it. I doubt it. I really like Primosh's chasing debut. I thought he jumped really, really well. But he's, again, another one with 3 or 4 entries over the weekend. Yeah. I thought at the prices, Look Away was quite a big price at around 8-1. Yeah. Now, if you look back he started last season really well. He beat Cam Sanas in a Grade 2 at the October meeting. Chased home Iberico Lord in the Greatwood Hurdle as well. He then finished second behind Captain Teague on soft and heavy ground in the Challow, and then disappointed in the Betfair Hurdle on probably ground that was too soft for him that day. Went on to finish third at Aintree behind Mystical Power and Firefox. So he had some really good form. I think a lot will discount him because he only won a match race at Uttoxeter on his chasing debut. That was against Personal Ambition, who's quite a smart horse, and I thought he jumped really well. In these novice chases, I do like a front runner because they can get chasing debutants and horses with less experience under pressure. And yeah, I thought 8-1 was quite a big price for a horse that jumps well, has brilliant Cheltenham form, and is race fit.
I'm with you. I like Look Away. Always been a fan of his. You?
Yeah, definitely a contender. I did message Scoo this morning to find out where Primoz was running, but he hasn't got back to me at the time of recording, unfortunately. I think Bet365 have got this right. They've ducked Iberico Lord 3-1. I think there's 5-1 available in the village. I think that's quite a tidy price, to be honest, for a horse that wound up being good enough or thought good enough to go and run in a champion hurdle. And it's not as if it's a trainer that just thinks, oh, we'll take a punt. We've not got many champion hurdle horses, we'll just stick this horse in. It was Nicky Henderson. So he clearly thought, albeit that he ran abysmally on heavy ground and maybe bounced from that Betfair win where he was supremely impressive. He beat Look Away as well, so there's over hurdles last year. I just thought 5-1 was a bit tall for him. And that's not to crab L'Heure de Sud, who I thought jumped beautifully around Stratford, but I'd probably just take a little chance with Iberico Lord. He goes fresh. Well fresh, sorry.
Let's move on and talk about the two big races of the meeting. And first of all, the Paddy Power Gold Cup. Paul Nicholls is trying to win, I think, for the 4th time. Ginny's Destiny is a 3-1 favourite. Imagine 5-1. Il Ridotto 7s. Garlaw 9s. Inex Chelsea's Deo 10s. Let's Go Champ 10s. Protectorat, the Ryanair winner, carrying top weight 12-1 and 14-1 bar those. The floor is open. How do you see this being played out?
Well, let Robbie Goodfellow have first dig, shall we?
Wow.
I was actually asked to preview this a couple of weeks ago by oddschecker, and I put up Let's Go Champ. Okay. I looked at it. I think Henry de Bromhead has looked at what Gavin Cromwell did last year and target the October and November meetings and thought, yeah, I'll have a bit of this. because he had the 1-2 in that 3 mile 1 grade Class 2 handicap chase at the October meeting. This is his only entry for the race, and he's really, really lightly raced for a 9-year-old. He's only had 9 starts under rules. Now, if you look back at his form, he was given educational rides behind American Mike, Factor File and Embassy Gardens last year to get a handicap mark, and then ran really well in handicap company after that. He was really well backed. He won a competitive 17 runner grade 3 handicap chase at the Punchestown Festival, I think by about 2.5 lengths that day. Looked handicapped based on that. Then ran well to finish 6th in the Galway Plate afterwards. Pinkerton did that form, no harm recently as well. He's only £1 higher than his Irish mark here, so he hasn't been overburdened by his weight. And I've been really impressed with Darragh O'Keefe stepping in for Rachel Blackmore so far this year. Obviously, he's had a couple of big winners so far, including on Envoy Allen. And yeah, I thought he'd end up going off shorter than the 10-1 that is available at Bet365.
All right. Currently 10-1, same price as Innex Chelsea's Deo. Who do you like here?
Definitely on my short list as well. Like Steve, the way they travelled at Punchestown on good ground as well. And it depends, it remains to be seen whether they water again Friday night for Saturday or they feel that there's enough moisture in the ground anyway. But if it is starting to dry out by 2:20 on Saturday, that'll suit him. I think it's a really intriguing race this year. Don't know how much quality there is outside the first 2 or 3 in the market.
Assuming Protectorate is going to run, it will mean
I hope so.
7 are out of the handicap.
Yeah, I think he's a big player, Protectorate.
Well, I mean, were he to win it, obviously 167. If he managed to do it off that, that would be some performance.
Yeah.
167. Well, Stage Star was 155.
Back in the day, we used to have Bradbury Star and that type of ilk.
But I mean, Bradbury Star again. Bradbury
and
Star won it if I'm marking the mid 150s.
Yeah,
167's a big ask.
It is.
But it's great to see.
He's a Grade 1 winner, isn't he?
See it. Yeah, I prefer to see it than.
And he
not.
arguably should be a previous winner of this race as well. He was a bit unlucky when he was beaten in it 3 years ago. So I think he's a player. I mean, his runs after a break are, 200 days are either second, first, and he finished last of 4 in the Betfair Chase, which there was problems there. So for me, I think he's around about 16-1 elsewhere. 365 got it right, 12-1. I would have him around that price, or perhaps a bit shorter. Ginny's Destiny, I think, is going to be a horse that's probably going to be better over 3 miles in time, and whether 2.5 on easy ground or good to soft ground is going to be a significant enough test for him. He's 3-1. I can certainly see the case for him. Goes well in November. Paul Nicholls got him last year. He was pretty fat off a summer break. Took a while to get him fit, but then he just thrived. He said to me off the record, I should say this, but he's. I'm not going to name the horse that he would pick up and carry, but there's a similar type of horse that runs in a similar type of race, and Ginny's Destiny would be significantly
Is this
better
horse
than
7-1 for the fan?
No, it's not El Redoto. And of course we've got Imagine, who goes particularly well fresh. Harry Derham's had this race in mind for him all summer.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to see him work on the gallop that Mick Shannon used for Yumzane down at Lambourne on Friday. Went well.
Bit more resolution, hopefully, in the finish.
Well, he wouldn't mind winning the prize money that Yumzane did.
No, absolutely.
Was he runner-up 7 times in the
in the Ark?
In the Ark. So yeah, this has been the plan for him, and Harry clearly feels that off 145, it's a mark that he really should be exploiting. Yeah. So it's a tremendous race. My shortlist would be Imagine, Protectorate, and Steve's fancy Let's Go Champ. Those would be the 3, and I'd overlook Ginny's Destiny because it's sort of 3-1 and looks like it's going to get tighter now. There's a little bit of bandwagon effect with
exactly
Paul Nicholls' horses now.
If Paul Nicholls hadn't had the weekend he'd had, I don't think Ginny's Destiny would be quite 3-1. I'm going to have an each way bet on Straw Fan Jack.
Are you?
I know he's out of the handicap, but he's run well at Cheltenham on a number of occasions, including at the festival last year in that handicap at the back end of the season. He loves quick ground. So assuming that there is still a lot of speed in the race on Saturday, I think he could run well at a big price. He caught a few people out. I mean, obviously, he's been tried in much better company, and he's come up short against the likes of Pic Dory, but he's got place. He's picked up lots of good prize money for the stable. And
Sheila's had a couple of winners this autumn.
And he's also... he was a smart horse, rated in the 130s, heading to 140 over hurdles. And I just think that the setup of the race should suit him. I think he could run well at the big price. I don't see him winning the race, but I think 25 to 1, it's not the worst shout for a horse who goes well at the track, likes quick ground, has run well over course and distance in the past. And there are holes about some of the other horses at the top of the market that you can pick. So I thought it'd be interesting. I didn't have a massively strong view. I thought he could run okay. And then on Sunday, we moved to the Greatwood Hurdle, which I think this could potentially be a good race, primarily because one of my favourite horses runs in it. You know, I've got a soft spot for Dysart Enos, who's a 7-2 favourite. There's decent opposition. Burdett Road 5 to 1, Go Dante 13 to 2, Under Control, a mare 9 to 1. Djokovic Cavan 10s, Lump Sum, one of the Welsh champion hurdle 10s, 12s bar. Encouraging words for Dysart Enos for me?
Yeah, I had a soft spot till she was a non-runner on the morning of the Cheltenham Festival assignment. I backed her at 10s and 12s, unfortunately. But there we go, that wasn't a great day.
I think I probably bopped her because I went down to film at Fergal O'Brien's.
You're to blame, then.
Yeah.
Typically.
Sorry.
Typically. No, she's obviously got a great chance, and I don't think Fergal's hidden away from the fact that he thinks 131's a very fair mark for her. I can certainly see the case with Burdett Road. I was sort of trying to make a case for Be Aware. Now, whether he's quite man enough for this, but I like that second at Sandown. He lost a shoe that day on that final day of the season last year, and I thought at 10 or 12 to 1. The Skeltons have only run 2 in this race, or have only entered 2 in this race, 1 and Willie the Builder, along with Be Aware. I think that's interesting given their record in handicap hurdles in the last 10 years. So I think he's got plenty of upsides. Only had 4 starts. I think he was learning on the job a bit last year, but I think conditions will be fine for him. And you know, you read the stable tours and you look at the way that the stable operates. They were looking to try and nick a nice big prize with him before Christmas, before then going on to other things. And I think this is the one they've had in their sights.
All right, 12 to 1. Be Aware for the Greatwood with Bet365. Who do you like, Steve?
I respect the top 2 in the market, Dysart Enos and Burdett Road should have a few pounds in hand based on his flat rating in comparison to the hurdle rating. But that's the same case for Djokovic Cavan, for Emmett Mullins. I think this might be a bit of a gamble. He's well known for obviously kind of punts in this. Bet365 are shortest at 10 to 1. There's still 14 to 1 out there. But for people that don't remember, this is the horse that was really well backed for the Cesarewitch this year. If they backed him into 5 to 1 joint favourite off a mark of 83 on the flat, then he's got to be well handicapped off 126 over hurdles. The UK handicapper has kind of done his best to try to convince them not to come over. Yeah. He's put £10 extra on his Irish mark. He's only rated 116 over in Ireland over hurdles. So whether at that point they'll look at it and go, no, okay, we'll target something at the DRF instead, it is another question. But if you look at his profile, he had 5 runs over hurdles for Paul Hennessy. 3 of those were qualifying runs for a handicap mark, and 2 of those were behind Lossiemouth. That was at the Cheltenham Festival in the Triumph when sent off 300 to 1, and when sent off 200 to 1 at the Punchestown Festival. He then hasn't ran over hurdles again since. He then was really well backed for his reappearance on his first run for Emmett on the flat. Should have won at Galway, to be honest. Michael O'Sullivan should have, well, he'll want the ride back, let's say. And then didn't quite fire in the Cesarewitch. I think finished 9th or 10th. Yeah. But yeah, I thought around sort of 10 to 1 for this. I thought they might try and land that money that they lost in the Cesarewitch.
So Alphonse Legrand's got an entry at Cheltenham.
Yeah, in that conditional riders. Yeah, I saw that.
With no weight at all. Anyway, that's just by the by.
Can I throw one more in at a big price? Tintin.
Okay.
Or Tin.
40 to 1 with Bet365.
40 to 1, yeah. I think perhaps when the market's mature and there's more places on offer, he might be one that just sneaks in at a big price. I think Fergal's had this in mind for a bit. I think he might have needed that run back at Wetherby. Yeah. He's already won round here, beat Ray Middleton here in the spring. I wonder whether he might run quite a nice race. I think there's a bit of upside with him.
Okay, I'm not going to desert her now.
No, I understand
Dysart Enos, I think 131 is very generous. With Golden Ace is now around 140. I think Take No Chances, who she beat, obviously in the bumper as well. Yeah, okay, her hurdles form was a bit thin, but beat the best of the horses that she beat over hurdles last season. But she did all those wins. She did them easily. So hopefully Dysart Enos can continue to keep her unbeaten record. Is there anything else running over the weekend or at all? I mean, I mentioned one other, Liberty Hunter, who I was hopeful for. He's entered in the Schloer, also in the handicap chase. Were he to run in the handicap chase, he will carry some of my cash if he turned up for that. Anything else?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a betting proposition, but LA Francais is back in France on Sunday, currently 9-4 favourite with Bet365 for the King George. We got a comment on our YouTube video last week, the fact that we mentioned fast or slow, and then about 2 hours after we recorded this, he then wasn't in the entries.
But also he can be supplemented.
He can.
So,
but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how LA Francais goes. He does have a Betfair Chase entry, but yeah, they decided to go and stick to France instead.
Okay. Anything else?
I think it's on the Saturday, the 2:55. I think it's named after a podcast, obviously an inferior one. I think he's going to run there, if I've got it right, a 3 mile, 2:55. I think. I don't know if it's a Saturday or the Sunday.
What's the horse?
Doyen Quest.
5-1 with Bet365 for that podcast handicap herd.
For that podcast, yeah.
Horse's Mouth.
The Horse's Mouth.
Hello, Horse's Mouth.
All good podcasts.
Skyjack, Hijack, who won at Exeter, is a 92 favourite.
Have you ever seen a hurdle at Novice jump as well as him? Fantastic.
And railed like the proverbial.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. Track one. I think Harry Skelton's been jocked up for this, so I think I'd probably bet him and Gal Road, who I thought ran really well. It was a bit unfortunate to find an Elliott thing whizzing past him on the run-in, as many British horses do. But yeah, I think Doyen Quest is going to run in this from a number of other entries that weekend.
All right, that's one to keep an eye out for. Okay, we're closing in to the end of the show. But before we get our best bets of the meeting at Cheltenham, just to let you know of a free-to-play 6 horses challenge. It is available every weekend with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6. T's and C's apply. So it's time now for our best bets of the meeting. Sam Turner, as the guest, you are going first.
It's going to be a Skelton horse.
A few to choose from.
Protectorate each way.
Okay, wow. Protectorate each way.
Well, I can't sit here and say weight doesn't matter and then not tip the top weight in the Paddy Power.
All right. Talk me through your reasons for why you think Protectorate can defy a marker 167.
I think obviously he's got loads of Cheltenham form, goes very well fresh, stable. I think the stable have almost got to run him, haven't they? Because he can't run in a Betfair Chase, I wouldn't have thought. He's going to be kept in and around this trip. There aren't that many races that he can run in. He's going to keep a percentage of the field out of the weight, so that'll appeal to them. Yeah, he might be vulnerable to one of improvers like Imagine, Ginny's Destiny, etc. But he's just a class horse in the race, isn't he? If it wasn't for passing in the Ryanair, then, I fancy. I think Frodon won this off top weight, did he? What rating did he have, Frodon, when he won this?
Good question.
Yeah. Should know that, really.
I should know that.
No, I should. No, I just think. I know 12's a bit tight, but I think 16-1 in the village is very fair each way. And if you can get the 4 and 5 places somewhere along the line, I think anything double figures about a horse that acts so well, is trained by a genius. I don't think it's too early to crown down that. And, loves Cheltenham and won't mind the ground.
Okay, lots of positive then. But Protectorate.
You're winning money if he's in the first 4 or 5, aren't you, at those prices?
Yeah, no, it's 12-1 with Bet365, so a fair call. Steve.
I'm going to go directly against Sam. I'm going to go Let's Go Champ in the Paddy Power. Lightly raced 9-year-old. I was blown away by his handicap win at Punchestown Festival last season. I still think he's well handicapped. He's only a pound higher than his Irish mark. I've been really impressed with Darrow O'Keefe recently. And I think he can win the Paddy Power at 10-1 Bet365.
You can back them both each way.
Yeah, well, perfect. Well, you won't have to do that.
Well, you also definitely be on Sunday, won't it?
Mine's on Sunday. Read like a book. You haven't forgotten me, have you?
No.
We may have been apart, but I was still very.
Plus, you've still got plenty to look forward to. Then that's what every tipster does. Tips in the last race of the day.
In fairness, it didn't matter what race she's running in. I'm going to tip Dysart Enos. I have a very soft spot for her, but she's earned that from the day that she beat Queen's Gamble at Market Raisin. I was devastated because I was a big Queen's Gamble. I still am a big Queen's Gamble fan, but Dysart Enos brushed her aside that day.
Don't go throwing away your Queen's Gamble scarf just yet.
No.
I saw her work last week. She looks in great form.
I'm very much a Queen's Gamble fan. Dysart Enos, she's 6 from 6. Her bumper form, obviously the one at Aintree, looks extremely strong, having beaten Golden Ace. Golden Ace beat Brighter Days Ahead. And I mentioned Take No Chances was behind her on that occasion. She was pretty impressive in her hurdling career so far. Sadly, she missed out at Cheltenham, but this has been the plan for a long time. So it's not as if she's just happened upon the Greatwood. And even before she went to Cheltenham last year, I was saying 131 is a very generous mark for a horse who I think could be a superstar. So Dysart Enos for me in the Greatwood Handicap Hurdle. And unless that's it, hang on, I'm going to check for Frodon. What year did Frodon win that race? I've got to find it now.
It was cold that day.
Okay, so Frodon won that race. Definitely won that race?
Or was it the Christmas one that it won?
I think it was the Christmas
Might have
one.
been the December Gold Cup.
Yeah.
The December Gold Cup.
Yeah, no. You've caught me
Off
on the
top
back
weight.
foot, yeah. Okay, not that one.
That was a slick end to the show.
Yeah, what a wonderful... Frodon did a lot of winning in the 160s.
Did he?
Yeah.
Well, he won it by 17 lengths, didn't he?
Yeah.
And De Bruyne.
There we go.
Go on.
164
164.
in December 18.
Yeah.
God, was it that long ago?
164
What,
and won by
Frodon?
17 lengths.
Yeah.
So, you know, weights and measures, boys. I'll
Was
say,
it
well, that
17
could have
lengths?
won. It was a lot.
It's
Of,
not coming up.
it was a lot of lengths, wasn't it?
Frodon won by a length and a quarter from Sepage.
Well, what was the race that he won by about 17 lengths?
But it wasn't a great race. Guitar Pete, Baron Alka. I mean, I could have won that race by a length and a half, carrying 11 stone 12. That was
But
the
he still
Caspian
won it.
Caviar Gold Cup. Yes, he did still win it. No, to be
Off
fair.
what weight? Off.
164.
There you go then.
Yeah.
Protectorate. Want to
It's 3
run the
pounds
Ryanair
better than
like he
Frodon.
did.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Protectorate runs well. I
You're
love
not?
the idea of horses running
Yeah,
with big weights and handicaps.
Absolutely.
Good horses running. It's exciting.
it is. It
It
is.
makes-
I mean, you've got a lovely blend in that race. I know I said there wasn't a massive amount of quality outside the front two. What I meant to say was that there wasn't a massive amount of horses that I think are going to leave that handicap mark behind
Yes.
as the season wears on. I think Steve's is a possible contender for that.
Yeah.
But I think Imagine and Ginny's, you'd be amazed if they're still rated where they are you
Yeah.
know, in
I-
6
I
months'
agree.
time.
Well, thank you very much for that entertaining hour here on this episode of Racing Weekly. Thank you for joining us as well. This episode brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Thank you to Steve Ryder and Sam Turner. Great to have you back. We're back next week. Gavin Lynch is coming over from Ireland to take some money off me at golf, from what I understand. But we'll also be looking ahead to the Betfair Chase at Haydock and the Morgiana at Punchestown. But for now, from the Racing Weekly team, bye-bye.